The signal pulsed through the void, a relic of war, traveling at light speed, bouncing between dying stars and shattered moons. It was a message encoded in defiance, spoken by a voice long since silenced. "You'll regret this war." Commander Elias Voss had spoken those words in the last days of Earth, just before the world went dark. Now, centuries later, something had found the transmission. Elias Voss clenched his jaw as the gravity of his actions settled on his shoulders. The war had been brewing for decades, but no one had expected the first strike to come so soon, nor so ruthlessly. The Zalari, an empire spanning 1,000 systems, had deemed humanity a nuisance, an infestation spreading through their pristine dominion. And like any infestation, they had sought to exterminate it. The first attack had been swift. Entire colonies burned overnight. The Zalari fleets descended upon human worlds with a clinical brutality, glassing surfaces and reducing civilizations to ash. And Earth had not been spared. Voss stood aboard the last human warship, the Solstice, staring at the fractured remains of his homeworld through the reinforced viewport. The once blue planet was now a smoldering husk, its atmosphere choked with fire and debris. The moon had been shattered. Great chunks of lunar rock drifted in orbit, a tombstone marking humanity's grave. His crew was silent. There was no rage left, only a hollow acceptance. They were the last, and the war was over. Except Voss refused to accept that. "Commander," a voice crackled through the ship's failing comms. Lieutenant Alina Stroud stood at his side, her uniform torn, blood staining the fabric. "The Zalari fleet is still in pursuit. We can't outrun them forever." He exhaled slowly. "Then we don't outrun them." Stroud blinked. "Sir, we make sure they remember us," Voss said. His eyes burned with something deeper than sorrow, something that refused to fade. "If we can't win, we leave a scar they'll never forget." He turned to the holotable, bringing up a star map. Among the few systems left unscathed by the Zalari was an unassuming sector, empty, save for a dense nebula. The Solstice could slip inside, vanish from their scanners. "Set a course," he ordered. "We're not done yet." Stroud hesitated, then nodded. "Aye, Commander." The Solstice groaned as its battered engines roared to life, and the last ship of humanity disappeared into the void. Somewhere in the darkness, the last transmission from Earth continued its journey through the stars, carrying Voss's final warning. "You'll regret this war." The Solstice plunged into the depths of the nebula, its hull groaning under the strain of gravitational eddies and electromagnetic storms. Swirling clouds of ionized gas masked the ship from Zalari scanners, but the danger was far from over. The nebula was a maze of unstable anomalies, the kind that could tear a vessel apart in seconds. Voss leaned over the command console, watching the ship's energy reserves drain. Their last battle had left them crippled, half their weapons offline, shields barely functional, and life support flickering. They had no home left to return to, no reinforcements on the way. They were humanity's last breath. Stroud sat at the navigation controls, her fingers dancing across the hollow interface. "We're running on fumes, sir. If we don't find somewhere to land soon, we're done." "There's nothing to land on," Chief Engineer Darius grunted, his voice thick with exhaustion. "This nebula's just gas and dead rock." Voss narrowed his eyes at the display. A plan was forming in his mind, a desperate, reckless idea. "We don't need to land. We just need time." He turned to Stroud. "Is there anything in here big enough to hide us?" Stroud frowned, running scans. "There's a planetary fragment about 3 light minutes from our position. Could be the remains of a moon or a failed planet." "That's our cover," Voss said. "Take us in slow and kill all non-essential power. If we go dark, we might just slip past them." Stroud nodded, adjusting course. The ship's engines sputtered, struggling to obey. The Solstice drifted deeper into the nebula, its hull scraping against invisible forces that pressed in from all sides. Then the proximity alarms blared. "Contact!" Darius shouted. "Zalari scout ships, 3 of them. They're sweeping the nebula." Voss clenched his fists. "They know we're in here." Stroud's hands hovered over the controls. "Orders, sir." Voss considered their options. They couldn't outrun the Zalari, not in this condition. If they powered up their weapons, The energy signature would give away their exact location. But if they stayed silent, the Zalari might pass them by. The bridge was deathly quiet as the crew waited for his decision. "Hold position," Voss said. "No weapons, no movement. If they get too close, we'll deal with them another way." The Solstice remained still, drifting among the nebula's eddies. Through the viewport, the Zalari ships appeared, sleek, black hulls slicing through the fog like blades. Their sensor arrays pulsed, scanning the void with cold precision. The crew held their breath. One of the Zalari ships altered course, heading straight for them. Darius swore under his breath. "They've got us." Stroud's fingers twitched over the controls. "We can still fight." Voss exhaled sharply. "Not yet." The Zalari scout ship slowed as it neared. Its weapons hummed to life, ready to strike. Voss met Stroud's eyes. "Prepare for emergency maneuvering. If they fire—" A new signal burst onto their scanners. The Zalari ships hesitated, their weapons dimming. Then, one by one, they turned and fled, vanishing into the nebula without a shot fired. The bridge was silent, save for the soft hum of failing life support. Stroud swallowed hard. "What just happened?" Darius tapped furiously at his console. "Picking up something big, moving toward us." The scanners flickered as an immense shadow emerged from the nebula's depths. Voss's blood ran cold. Whatever had scared off the Zalari was coming for them now. The shadow moved like a ghost through the nebula, its form shifting in and out of the swirling gas clouds. At first, it seemed almost formless, just another anomaly of the storm. But then the ship's failing sensors began picking up details. It was massive, bigger than any warship Voss had ever seen. Its silhouette dwarfed the Solstice. Its hull was old, ancient, even, covered in layers of blackened plating that looked as though they had been reforged over centuries. It bore no markings, no insignia, nothing to indicate its origin. Yet, it was very much alive. The ship's energy signature was unlike anything in the known galaxy. It pulsed with an eerie, almost organic rhythm, its presence a thunderous whisper against the Solstice's sensors. It was neither fully machine nor fully biological, but something in between, something impossible. Stroud's voice was barely a whisper. That's not Zalari." Darius swore under his breath. "No, but it sure as hell isn't human either." Voss tightened his grip on the edge of his console. "Comms. No transmissions," Stroud said, scanning the channels. "It's just there." Then, the lights on the bridge flickered. A pulse of energy rippled through the ship, washing over their systems. The Solstice's displays scrambled for a moment, rebooting as though something had forced its way inside. Then a voice echoed through the ship. It didn't come from the comms. It came from everywhere. "Human vessel, you have entered the threshold. You will answer." The crew froze. The voice was deep, resonant, not mechanical but not entirely organic either. It vibrated through the hull, seeping into their bones. Voss swallowed, his throat dry. He had heard stories of old ghost ships, of derelicts from forgotten wars that still haunted the edges of space. But this was something else entirely. He steadied himself. "This is Captain Voss of the Terran warship Solstice. Identify yourself." Silence. Then, the voice returned. "Terran warship?" The way it said the word made Voss uneasy. The tone carried something that felt almost amused. Stroud was furiously analyzing the readings. "Sir, I don't think it's transmitting through radio waves or standard communication lines. This thing is talking directly into our systems. Maybe into our minds." Voss inhaled slowly. "What are you?" For a long moment, there was no reply. Then, something changed. The nebula around them darkened as the massive ship adjusted its position. The swirling gases parted, revealing more of its impossible structure, jagged and asymmetrical, as if it had been grown rather than built. Then the voice spoke again. "We are what remains. We are the forgotten." Darius exhaled sharply. "That's not comforting." Voss ignored him. "Forgotten by who?" There was a pause. And then, "By you." The bridge fell silent. A cold feeling settled in Voss's stomach. He had expected many things. A hidden Zalari weapon, an unknown species. But not this. "Explain," he said, his voice steady. The ship shifted, its form obscured once more by the nebula. The energy pulsing through its hull slowed, as if considering its next words. "You do not remember," because you were never meant to. Your kind erased us. But memory is not so easily destroyed. Even in the void, echoes remain. Stroud's hand shook as she pulled up the ship's archives. Sir, I'm running every database we have, but there's no mention of anything like this. No records, no myths, nothing. Darius let out a nervous laugh. What? We wipe an entire species from history. I think we'd remember that. But Voss wasn't so sure. Humanity had fought countless wars across the stars. Not all of them had been clean. Some enemies had been obliterated so thoroughly that their names had faded into dust. It was possible. It was terrifying. Voss took a slow breath. Are you here for revenge? The silence that followed was heavy, stretching across the bridge like a weight. Then at last the voice spoke. No. A flicker of something almost like relief passed through the crew. But then, we are here because the war you fear is already lost. You do not know it yet, but soon you will. A chill ran down Voss's spine. He stepped closer to the console. What war? For the first time, the voice seemed to hesitate. Then, the nebula outside their ship began to glow. Not from a forgotten vessel, but from something deeper within the storm. The sensors blared with warnings, struggling to make sense of what was happening. The Forgotten spoke one last time. Look to your home, Terran. The war has already begun. Then, with a burst of impossible speed, the massive vessel vanished. The bridge was silent. Stroud's hands flew over the controls. I'm picking up something new. Broadcast signals, all over human space. A distress call. Darius checked the main sensors. His voice was a whisper. Oh God. The main display flickered to life. It was Earth, or what was left of it. The image showed the once brilliant blue planet, now choked in fire and ruin. Massive fleets burned in orbit. Cities crumbled under unrelenting bombardment. The message playing on repeat from every surviving ship, every desperate outpost, was the same. This is Earth's last transmission. You'll regret this war. Voss clenched his fists, his voice a low growl. Set course for Sol. The Solstice tore through space at maximum burn, its engines screaming against the void. The ship was never meant to sustain this kind of speed for long, but Voss didn't care. Earth was under siege. Every second mattered. The bridge was in chaos. Stroud was rerouting power. Darius was pulling every available sensor feed, and the crew moved with a sharp, desperate efficiency. No one spoke unless they had to. The images on the main display had robbed them of words. The attack on Earth wasn't just an invasion. It was an extermination. Fleets burned in orbit. Cities were turned to glass. And the enemy? They weren't Zalari. They were something worse. Stroud's voice shook as she read the latest transmission. Sir, we have a confirmed enemy designation. Voss turned sharply. Who? She hesitated, as if saying it aloud would make it real. Then, they're calling themselves the Dominion. Darius let out a dry, humorless laugh. Fantastic. Another empire of genocidal bastards. But this wasn't just another empire. The Dominion ships weren't sleek like the Zalari, nor blocky like Terran warcraft. They were jagged, black monstrosities, covered in shifting metallic spines that pulsed with eerie blue light. They moved like living things, twisting unnaturally, as if space itself bent around them. And worst of all, they weren't just attacking Earth. They were winning. Stroud's voice was barely a whisper. Sir, our forces are collapsing. Even the Resolute. She stopped, swallowing hard. Voss didn't need to ask. The Resolute was humanity's last Titan-class dreadnought. A fortress in space. Unbreakable. But as the footage flickered across the screen, he saw it. The Resolute was breaking apart, its hull splitting like paper, its defenses crumbling under a relentless onslaught. Hundreds of Dominion vessels swarmed it like a plague, tearing into its bulk with weapons unlike anything humanity had ever seen. And then, the screen went black. It's gone, Stroud whispered. No one spoke. The weight of it settled over them like a crushing force. The Resolute was more than just a ship. It was a symbol, a reminder that humanity could stand against the worst the galaxy had to offer. But now it was nothing but wreckage. Voss exhaled, slow and steady. ETA to Sol. Stroud wiped her eyes and focused. 2 minutes. Bring up the fleet network. I want to know who's still in the fight. She worked quickly, pulling up what was left of their forces. What she found made her face pale. The Solstice, and maybe 6 other ships. Darius swore. That's it. What about the colonies? The lunar defense grid? Stroud shook her head. Everything's gone. Voss clenched his fists. He had fought in a dozen campaigns, seen entire planets wiped clean by war. But this was something else. The Dominion wasn't fighting for territory. They weren't making demands. They were here to erase humanity. The bridge fell silent. Then a soft beep. An incoming transmission. But it wasn't from Earth. Voss narrowed his eyes. Put it through. The holoscreen flickered. And then, the Forgotten returned. Not their ship. Not their presence. Just a voice. Terran vessel. You return to a grave. Voss's voice was ice. We don't have time for cryptic warnings. If you know something, say it. Silence. Then, you wish to fight. You cannot win. The Dominion does not wage war. It devours. Darius gritted his teeth. Then why the hell are you talking to us? If we're already dead, just say it. A pause. Then, for the first time, the voice changed. It became softer, almost mournful. Because once long ago, we stood where you stand now. Stroud stiffened. You've faced them before. We did not face them. We fell to them. Voss's stomach twisted. You're saying you lost. That's why you were erased. We did not lose. The voice was quiet now. Heavy. We were unmade. A chill ran through the crew. The Dominion does not conquer. It consumes. We were the first. We are not the last. Voss inhaled sharply. Then help us. The silence stretched. Then finally, we cannot. A pulse of energy surged through the ship, and the transmission cut off. At the same moment, the Solstice dropped out of FTL, and the battle for Earth was already lost. The system was a graveyard. The once mighty Terran fleets were shattered wrecks. The orbital stations, built to withstand the worst the galaxy could throw at them, were reduced to drifting metal husks. And Earth burned. Firestorms raged across entire continents. The oceans boiled in places, choked with debris from the battle above. The last Terran defense platforms were still firing, but their shots barely made a dent against the endless tide of Dominion ships. Then, through the carnage, a voice cut through every open channel. A single message, broadcast from the last surviving Terran command center. This is Earth's last transmission. You'll regret this war. And then, silence. Voss clenched his fists. The Dominion fleet was everywhere, black ships blotting out the stars. They had come to end humanity. But humanity wasn't done yet. He turned to his crew, his voice steady. We're not leaving. Darius swallowed. Sir, we're one ship. I know, Voss said. And one ship is all we need. He tapped the main display, highlighting a single location. The Dominion flagship. A monstrous vessel, larger than any human city, its form shifting like something alive. It was the heart of the invasion. Stroud, plot a course. She hesitated. Then, seeing the fire in his eyes, she nodded. Aye, Captain. Darius exhaled sharply. We're really doing this, huh? Voss's jaw tightened. If this is the end, we're making damn sure they remember it. The Solstice turned, its engines roaring, and it dove straight into the storm. The Solstice burned through the battlefield, weaving between wreckage and fire, its hull shaking from near misses and glancing blows. The Dominion fleet had noticed them. The black, shifting ships moved like predators scenting fresh prey, breaking formation to pursue. Shields down to 30%. Stroud shouted, her fingers dancing across the console, trying to reroute power. We can't keep this up. Voss gritted his teeth. We don't need to. Just get us in close. The Dominion flagship loomed ahead, a nightmare of metal and pulsing energy, its jagged hull shimmering, as if phasing between realities. It was massive, easily dwarfing any human vessel. Whatever its core function, it was the center of the invasion. If they had any hope of ending this, it started there. Darius swore as another explosion rocked the ship. Hull breach on deck 3. We can't take much more of this. We're almost there. Voss snapped. Stroud, status on the payload. She didn't look up. The drive core is charged. We can overload it, but what? If we do this, there's no coming back. A beat of silence. The truth hung in the air. This wasn't a battle. It was a suicide mission. Voss exhaled, then nodded. Then we make it count. The Solstice pushed forward, engines howling as it closed the final distance. Dominion vessels swarmed, but Voss didn't care. The battle outside was irrelevant. The only thing that mattered was inside. Stroud, Darius with me. They ran. Down the corridors, past sparking conduits and flashing red lights. The ship groaning under the strain of battle. The engine core pulsed ahead. A brilliant sphere of contained energy, the heart of the ship. Darius worked fast, hands moving across the terminal. We're going to reroute every bit of remaining power into a cascade overload. It'll build, and then we punch a hole straight through that thing. Stroud finished. Voss placed his hand on the console. Can we remote detonate? A pause. Then, Stroud shook her head. Only manually. Voss stared at the readout. They had minutes. Maybe seconds. Darius clenched his jaw. Sir. Voss turned to them. His crew. His friends. And he made his decision. You two are getting off this ship. Stroud's eyes widened. What? No. Darius swore. Like hell we are. This isn't a debate. Voss grabbed his sidearm, tossing it to Darius. You're going to the escape pod bay. You're getting out of here. That's an order. But that's an order, Lieutenant. Voss's voice cracked like thunder. This ship dies here. One of us has to see it through. Stroud's hands curled into fists. Then we all do. No, Voss said softly. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Someone has to survive. Someone has to tell people what happened here. That we fought. That we didn't give in. Stroud bit her lip, her face twisted in pain. Darius looked away, then, without warning, grabbed Voss in a tight embrace. You better make it hurt, old man, he muttered. Voss smirked. You know I will. Then, the alarm blared. The overload was set. Stroud wiped her eyes, then turned and ran. Darius followed, the two of them disappearing down the corridor. Voss exhaled. He turned back to the core, feeling the heat against his skin. The Dominion flagship loomed beyond the viewport, unaware of what was coming. He smiled. Then, he hit the final switch. The Solstice surged forward, its engines glowing white-hot as the overloaded core reached critical. Dominion ships tried to react, but it was too late. The Solstice rammed into the flagship's hull and detonated. A white-hot eruption of energy tore through space. The shockwave rippled outward, a supernova of destruction that consumed everything in its path. Dominion ships fractured and burned. The flagship's hull split apart, its massive form collapsing inward as reality itself seemed to break. And then, the Dominion fleet faltered. Ships hesitated. Movement slowed. And, in the silence that followed, the tide began to turn. The shockwave rippled through the system, a final testament to the Solstice and its captain. Where the Dominion flagship had once loomed, a symbol of their unstoppable might, there was now only wreckage, drifting in silence. Human ships, battered and broken, paused in the aftermath. For one breathless moment, no one fired. No one moved. Then, like a spark in dry grass, the realization spread. The Dominion was retreating. Their formations collapsed. Their once perfect coordination shattered. Some vessels fled outright, blinking into hyperspace without order. Others remained still, disabled or abandoned. The unstoppable tide had cracked. Humanity had made them bleed, and the survivors would never forget it. Stroud and Darius watched from the escape pod, their viewfinder filled with debris and fire. Stroud's fingers trembled as she adjusted the comms, her voice barely above a whisper. Voss. No answer. Darius swallowed hard. He did it. Stroud clenched her jaw. Yeah, he did. She wiped her eyes, blinking away the burning behind them. The pod's sensors registered incoming ships, human vessels, moving to reclaim the battlefield. A message crackled through the comms. This is Admiral Kepler of the Aegis. We've received your distress signal. Survivors, respond. Darius hesitated, then pressed the transmitter. His voice was hoarse, but steady. This is the last crew of the Solstice. The captain is gone, but he took the Dominion bastard with him. There was silence on the other end. Then, the Admiral spoke, his tone grave, but with something else underneath. Pride. Understood, Lieutenant. Welcome home. The war did not end that day. But something had changed. Humanity, once seen as weak, fragile, had defied the impossible. One ship, one crew had turned the tide. The Dominion, for the first time in recorded history, had suffered a decisive loss. And the message spread. Across the stars, suppressed species whispered of the battle, of the humans who refused to kneel, of the last transmission sent before the solstice made its final charge. You'll regret this war. The words burned like a prophecy, a warning carved into history itself. And the Dominion, for all its might, had begun to wonder. Had they awakened something they could never control? Years passed. The war raged on, shifting and twisting with every new battle. But the Dominion never fully recovered from that day. The cracks deepened. The whispers grew. And then, one day, the Dominion was no more. No single event marked its fall. No grand declaration. But the stars changed. In its place rose something new. A coalition built not on conquest, but on defiance. On survival. On the unbreakable will of those who had stood against the dark. And, at the heart of every victory, every uprising, every final stand, there was a name. Voss. A legend whispered among rebel fleets, painted on the sides of warships, muttered in defiant prayer. A single human who had stood at the edge of oblivion and spat in the face of death. And in the silence of space, where wreckage still drifted from long-forgotten battles, one phrase remained, passed from world to world, from generation to generation. A promise. A challenge. A truth carved in fire and steel. Human, don't stop.